there's so much feedback when you put out like a podcast, when you put out your own stuff. And I think especially in the podcasting space, because people can comment and anonymously, quote unquote, like, how do you take that?
Yeah, some of it stings.
Yeah.
But I feel very blessed, not to sound like a jerk, but I do feel blessed because we have over like 3,100 reviews or something, which is so kind. And the vast majority of them are really, really nice things. People are like, this changed my life. But it is amazing how there's like 3,000 positive ones and there's like 83 people in the world who cannot stand
I
me.
love that you know that number.
That's exactly the point.
I know.
Yeah,
it is the point.
And it does feel devastating sometimes when you read people's words. Yeah. And I think that people should hear that though, because I do feel like there's this misconception that once you're doing something like this, or you look like you've arrived, or by the way, I'm so on the way, like I don't think I've arrived, but when you have some kind of success, people think, oh, she won't take that badly, or, oh, she's in the ring, so now it's our chance. We can heckle her and she doesn't feel it. And it's like, I'm just a girl standing in front of a guy asking her to remember that from Nottingham.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Like, I'm just a person.
Yeah.
And so I do have moments where I will read things and be like, oh, forget, I'm not going to ever do this again. And then 4 minutes later, I'm like, well, that's probably stupid. But of course it affects me. I wish it didn't, but it does.
Do you ever hear anything and you're like, oh yeah, that's right, I should probably work on that?
Yeah, I do also feel like that because I want to grow. And so I teach my audience that we should think about what other people need. I think that radical empathy is 100% what's needed in a thriving relationship or business, which business is a relationship. So I don't really scoff it off. I look and see if there's anything consistent. And if there is, I'll be like, oh, they're right. There are too many ads. Get rid of those. Or, oh, they're right. It's, maybe I should talk less. They want to hear the guest more or whatever they're saying. But typically, by and large, thankfully, it seems like it's working. But I think the reason it's working is because every show, my number one priority is what are the pain points of my listener? So of course I should care about the feedback. And I do. But then I guess there's a balance, right? Because if there's just a few nasty apples and everybody else is really happy, then I guess that also is feedback, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a balance. This whole being an entrepreneur thing is not for the faint of heart. Like, it's really not. People think it's a whole thing. It really is a whole thing.
It's a lot more of an internal battle than I would have ever thought. And I think when I was in the corporate, my corporate job for 8 years or whatever, there was a lot of internal struggles that I dealt with, in my understanding of relationships at work and how like hierarchies work and just how could I be myself in a corporate environment? How could I be creative? How could I be the person that I felt like I should be? All of these things. But when you're an entrepreneur, it's like every decision you live and die by, it feels like there's a deep, immense pressure for you to make the right decision at all times and you steer the ship. You are part of the ship that is being steered, and it's just, it's scary.
Yeah. And I think that probably the main difference is because you are the brand, right? It's you. So unlike sitting at a desk and building someone else's dream in corporate, this is you. And like the last few days I was recording my audiobook actually, and I was sitting there really sort of metabolizing what it is that I'm saying in this book. And it dawned on me, I came home and said to my husband, I'm like, you realize that I'm not preaching or pleading with people to have a new career. I'm really earnestly begging people to fall in love and fall back in alignment with themselves. And so this idea of don't keep your day job, this whole thing I'm doing is about finding your work where you wake up and you go, this is the click. This is me in my gut knowing I am in alignment where my soul can dance. And so, of course, what you just said is at stake because you're not really looking for the zeros in the bank account to add up. You're looking for, is this the moment where I actually feel like the person who was created to be me is now actually doing what I'm supposed to do? At least for me. I mean, I feel like that's what all of us who have our own business are striving for. Everyone who I've interviewed whether it's Bobby Brown or Jonathan Adler or Howard Schultz. It's really not about, if you want to make money, you could just go into real estate. You definitely shouldn't listen to my podcast or read my book. Like if all you're really curious about is just making money, there's so many faster ways. But if you're building something, then this is really like your rite of passage to somehow figure out how to live life on your terms and do the stuff that you know is whispering to you. And so it's so much more than a business, you know, and that makes it both exciting and scary, and we're so much more vulnerable. So every decision does feel like we need to kind of check in.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Morning Microdose by Almost 30.
We hope you enjoyed waking up.
As always, we encourage you to take what resonates and leave the rest. If you enjoyed this trip, tune into the full episode on the Almost 30 podcast. All episode information can be found in the show notes.
Make sure to subscribe, and if this becomes a part of your morning routine, be sure to share it with a friend. We have new inspiring doses Monday through Friday. Follow us on Instagram at Morning Microdose, and follow Almost 30 at Almost 30 Podcast.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you in the vortex.